Hey, it's Thursday, August 13th, 2020, and this is the Pro and Con Show, and I'm your host, Michael James Ott. As always, welcome to the show. As always, the primary reason to do the show is hopefully over time people will view it and get some ideas about how we might better govern ourselves, how we might work together to better do that, and be what's the right word? Oh God, I hate this. I'm having a senior moment. Um, be energized. That's not the word I'm looking for, but more enthusiastic about trying to be more involved in our politics um, by, frankly, getting rid of our political parties. So, citizen statesman. It's a great idea. Look at past videos. I'll talk about it again in future videos, but not today. So today we're talking about those political parties that I say I'd like to dismantle and basically cause them not to be anymore, because they're doing a huge disservice. They're dividing us into these two tribes with the intent that some wealthy, influential people can control a large portion of America through pushing certain agenda things. And today, actually, I just wanted to look at I just thought it would be interesting to look at the demographics, just some interesting demographics of the political parties. So age, religion, these kinds of things, how they are manifest themselves. And I have ideas, but they're all opinion about why voters separate themselves the way that they do. But I just think it's interesting. I thought you might think it's interesting. I find it interesting to see how different groups of people within the United States have a tendency to lean more toward, the left or those more socialist kinds of things versus the right, more conservative kinds of things. And so in these charts, and they came from Pew Research. So if you want to go, just go to the Pew, P-E-W, just Google Pew Research Center, and then you can look up political demographics or political party demographics, and you'll find many charts. I just picked a few of them here. I only have a few minutes. But anyway, and so these are the charts that I'm going to be talking about today. And the blue is like a left or Democrat leaning, and the red is Republican leaning. And then if there's a gray line, it means that these are people that have identified themselves as independents. Okay, so, so let's talk about voters over the generations. So you've got, and then they divide them into people who are Caucasian or white, and then people who are non-white. Okay. So for example, for millennials, so this is kind of the youngest generation that can vote. They're in their early 20s kind of thing, plus minus. And so white millennials are slightly, well, it's more than slight. So 52% versus 41% Democrat over Republican. But if you look at that same generation group and the non-Caucasian or non-white people, 72 leaning Democrat versus just 18 Republican. And then the generation before them, so-called Generation X, similar, Okay, so for white folks, 52, no, actually 52 Republican, 41 Democrat. So that's a flip for the generation, so the generation that's in their 30s right now. And but on the for the non-white side, it's still the same. It's just the difference has gotten smaller. So 64% versus 24%. And then the boomer generation, that's my generation, you've got about 53% Republican, 41% Democrat for Caucasians. And then for, again, the non-Caucasian folks, it's 71% Democrat, 22% Republican. So certainly people of color over all the generations. And then the next generation beyond me, older than me, it's a similar story. So if you're a Caucasian, 59% Republican versus 36 Democrat. But if you're a non-Caucasian, non-white, it's 75% Democrat, 19% Republican. So that's huge. It's very interesting, the differences between white and non-white, and I think it has to have a huge amount to do with the fact that people like myself have had a significant economic advantage, and so our lives have been fairly good, and it's unfortunately it's a human trait that if you haven't experienced needing other people, you think that nobody needs anyone. And that's one of the reasons why like younger people have a tendency, like why it flipped for the Gen X at first and then keeps going for the older ones, is you kind of have this, and America prides itself, or Americans pride themselves on being self-sufficient and stuff like that. But the reality is we all need each other. We do. And in my experience, Republicans are much more likely to think, well, I've never experienced those things, and it's their problem. It's not my problem. And the only difficulty with that is our lives span a long period of time, and the probability is actually quite high that someday you're going to experience that thing, whether it's high crime rates or you're going to be experience some kind of bias against you because of your age, for example, in finding another job, and on and on and on. Anyway, let's go to, let's see here. The next one, chart. Well, let's just talk about, because we're running out of time, let's talk about religious affiliation and party identification. So you've got, and again, this chart has Republican, Democrat, and Independent. So white, non-Hispanic, evangelistic, Protestant. So you've got 56% are Republican, 11% are Democrats, and 29% are independents. And then if you force the independents into one leaning or another, then it becomes 77% Republican or Republican leaning versus 18% Democrat or Democrat leaning. Okay, so that's white evangelical religious people. Then you have more mainline churches like Protestant, Methodist, Catholic, these kinds of things. And now for those, it's all very close. There's 33% Republican, 27% Democrat, and 36% Independent. And if you force them into leaning one way or another, it becomes 53% Republican and 41% Democrat. But if you look at African Americans, okay, and their religious, and so again, these would be like Baptist churches and things like that. So now it flips again. So 73%, if you have the three categories, 73% Democratic, 22% Independent, and only 3% Republican for non-white, non-Hispanic mainstream churches. And then if you force those independents into, more left-leaning or more right-leaning, then you have 87% Democrat or Democrat-leaning versus 7% Republican leaning. And so why are these demographics the way that they are? Well, it's because the people that run the political parties have, targeted various groups, various folks. They think, obviously there's variations in how they think, but there's definitely trends, okay, in how they think. And so they use things like, abortion or gun rights or, fear over safety, crime or whatever. And they push these basic propaganda points on these groups and thereby pull them by using those emotion generating issues and simple discussions, simple approaches to them. They pull these people into these groups. So the Democratic Party, the Republican Party has subgroups in it that are there because of certain issues that the propaganda masters at the top have been using to do exactly that, to get this group into a certain tribe or cult. And unfortunately, as I've said many, many times before, and I'll say many, many times again, now it's us versus them, because that's the way that the puppet masters, if you will, are doing it. And we're letting it happen, you and I. We're letting ourselves be led down this path of, I wouldn't call it extreme belief, but separatist, tribal warfare, anger, whatever it is, it's not good. And we can do so much better. And we will do so much better. It's just the question is when. And just how upset do all of us need to be before we finally say, oh, we've had enough. And I'm arguing we're there. We should say we've had enough. It's time to fix it. And the way to fix it is to eliminate the political parties, and the way you do that is adopt citizen statesmanship, which requires a constitutional amendment, a very detailed one, so we don't let the politicians screw up with the intent of the American people. Well, anyway, that's enough about the demographics for the politics today. So for the Pro and Con Show, I am your host, Michael James Ott. Thanks for watching the show, and until the next show, bye for now.